Welcome to your own deep dive. Ready to become a better learner?
Absolutely. And today we are diving deep into that.
We got a listener question about it, and honestly, it's something I've struggled with too.
Oh, yeah.
Totally. There's so much out there on productivity hacks and shortcuts to success.
It's really easy to get caught up in those, especially those big ideas.
I feel attacked.
Mhm.
I spent, no joke, years trying to make that 10,000-hour rule work for me.
The one that says 10,000 hours of practice makes you an expert.
Yep, that's the one. Thought I could just put in the time and boom, instant expert at, well, anything.
It's such a popular idea, though.
So where does it all fall apart?
Well, it comes from a study, like most of these things,
Okay.
but they were looking at violinists.
Violinists.
Yeah, like students at a top-tier music school and all the practice time they had.
So not like me trying to learn the theme song, too. Never mind.
Exactly. And that's problem number one. You're only looking at a very specific slice.
Right, so how does that apply to, like, everyone else?
You gotta look at the bigger picture.
Makes sense. What else?
Well, get this. They looked at all the data, not just the stuff they used before. Turns out, some who practice less did even better.
Hold on, are you serious?
Yeah, no magic number.
Wow. Okay, so much for that. Anything else?
Oh, yeah. They didn't even really factor in things like how well people slept. The best. They slept way more than the others.
Wait, so I should get more sleep instead of pulling all-nighters?
Sleep is important, but the real lesson here is there isn't a one-size-fits-all for success.
That's kind of a relief, actually. Takes the pressure off trying to follow someone else's path.
Exactly. Find what works for you. And that leads perfectly into our next point. We got to talk about early specialization. We talk about athletes who specialize young, like Tiger Woods, right?
Right. Golf club practically grafted to his hand. Crazy how much time he put in from such a young age.
Yeah, the poster child for going all in on one thing. But then you've got someone like Roger Federer.
Okay, yeah. He played, what, like a million sports as a kid?
Pretty much. Badminton, basketball, swimming, even wrestling. Can you believe it? Didn't focus primarily on tennis till his teens.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
So is specializing early a bad idea then?
It's not about good or bad, really. It's more like what's best for, actually growing and all that.
Okay, that makes sense. But I feel like we're always told to pick our lane and stick with it.
And that can work for some people, but there's more research now showing that going all in early can have downsides. Burnout is a big one.
Oh, for sure. Pushing too hard too young. What else?
Higher risk of injury, for one. And this is interesting. It can stop people from finding talents they didn't even know they had.
Makes sense if you're only ever doing one thing.
Exactly. You got to find that, what I call that match
Yep.
quality.
Match quality,
Like where your interests and skills and the actual thing you're doing all line up. But to find that, most people need to try stuff out.
So, gotta experiment a little.
Exactly. It reminds me of this time I was giving a talk, right? And Serena Williams was in the audience.
Hold up. The Serena Williams.
The one and only. And I was going on about this whole specialization thing, and she raises her hand.
I bet you about died.
Internally, freaking out a little, but she was so down to earth, shared how her dad had her doing all sorts of stuff growing up.
Like what?
Ballet, track and field, even taekwondo. He wanted her well-rounded, not just a tennis robot.
Wow. So even Serena, one of the best athletes ever, wasn't laser-focused from day one.
It really makes you think, right? This applies beyond sports, by the way. Careers, hobbies, how we learn in general.
Speaking of, let's get practical. I'll admit, I'm great at starting books, podcasts, all that. But remembering everything, whole other story.
That's so common these days, right? Information overload. But there are tricks. Like, ever heard of spaced repetition?
Spaced repetition. Sounds kind of sci-fi, not gonna lie. What is it?
It's just reviewing stuff over time instead of cramming it all at once.
Oh, so like not just reading the same thing 5 times in a row and hoping it sticks.
You got it. You space it out an hour later, the next day, a week later, and boom, your brain's more likely to hang on to it.
Like those reminders on your phone, but for learning.
Yeah.
What else? Any other brain hacks you got up your sleeve?
Definitely. The generation effect.
Okay, now you're just messing with me. Generation effect.
It just means that when you push yourself to remember something, even if you get it wrong at first, you actually remember it better later.
So even if I totally blank, it's better to try than to just look it up right away.
Yep. The effort makes your brain pay attention.
Yeah.
Then when you do see the right answer, it's like, oh, right, that's it.
So quizzing myself as I go is good, even if I feel clueless.
That's what we call a desirable difficulty.
A desirable difficulty.
Yeah, like it makes learning feel harder, but in a good way. Leads to remembering things better.
Huh, okay. Like those workouts where you're sore after, but you get stronger.
Exactly. Another one is interleaving.
Interwhatting.
Interleaving. Instead of studying one thing at a time, you mix it up.
So instead of doing all my multiplication tables, then moving on to division, I should.
Mix them up, exactly. Helps you see the connections between things, like cross-training for your brain.
So the takeaway is challenging myself, even if it feels uncomfortable at first, actually helps me learn better in the long run.
You got it. And this is even more important because, well, the world's changing faster than ever.
Which brings us to that last point. How do we keep up when everything keeps changing so fast?
It's a lot, right? It's like trying to learn a new dance, but the music keeps changing and the steps keep getting more complicated.
So how do we even begin to deal with that? It's like everything's up in the air all the time.
I think about it like there are different kinds of learning. Some things, they're more stable,
Okay, like what? Give me an example.
chess, for example, or like classical music. The rules are pretty much the rules. You learn them, you practice.
So in those areas, it's still about putting in the time to really master the fundamentals.
Yeah. But a lot of us, we're in fields that are constantly changing. What worked yesterday might be obsolete tomorrow.
It's like the rules of the game are being rewritten while you're still trying to figure out the basics.
And that's where adaptability comes in. You've got to be able to learn new things quickly, connect different ideas.
That makes sense, but it's also kind of terrifying, right? How can you prepare for jobs that don't even exist yet?
It's a challenge, for sure. Remember when ATMs first came out, people thought bank tellers would be out of a job?
Right, like who needs a person when a machine can just give you cash?
Exactly. But did that happen? Not really. The role just changed.
They went from counting cash to more complex stuff, like advising people on their finances.
And that's the thing about change. It disrupts, but it also creates new opportunities.
So with all this AI stuff happening now,
Huh.
it's not about freaking out, it's about being ready to adapt.
Exactly. It's about being curious, being willing to experiment and learn new things.
So to wrap things up today, we talked about a lot. Debunked the 10,000-hour rule, explored the idea of trying different things instead of specializing too early.
Right. And we also got into some cool learning techniques like spaced repetition and those desirable difficulties.
And finally, we talked about how important it is to be adaptable in a world that's constantly changing.
It's a lot to think about, but the main thing to remember is that you're not powerless. You can learn and grow and define your own success.
Love that. And to leave you with a final thought, we've been talking about challenging those assumptions we have about success. What's one story you've been telling yourself that might be holding you back? Something to think about. For more on all of this, check out the show notes. And as always, thanks for diving in with us.